Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Good morning, wellness warriors. I hope you are having a fabulous morning already. And if you are I'm just messing with my lighting here. If you are just getting started on today, then I hope this message inspires you towards some great choices today. If you are just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I'm a mom, a nana, a girlfriend, a graduate student studying for my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling. I am an activewear fanatic running an online activewear boutique for going on 7 years now, I think. Maybe 6. Maybe it's 6. I've lost track because it's just so much fun. I'm a runner, a jazzerciser, and a huge wellness advocate because I have spent my life battling with anxiety and depression, what was diagnosed as functional anxiety and depression. Functional meaning that it had basically incorporated into my personality to where I thought that it was just the way I was and that there was nothing I could do to change it. And what I learned through support groups and through talking with friends was that sharing information about how I had helped myself and learning how others had helped themselves was a great way to pick up new tips and tricks, try new things, and just support each other and help each other, which is kind of why I started Wellness Wednesday, because I wanted to share parts of my journey that might inspire you, that might help you, and more importantly, that might make you feel like you're less alone in what you're experiencing. And at the same time, maybe pick up some more tips and tricks from you, because the second that I think that I know it all and that I don't need to learn anything else is the moment that I grow stagnant and I'm at risk of going backwards in my wellness journey. So that is why we are here on Wellness Wednesday, episode number 115. Last week, I forgot to say, if you're here, let me know you're here. If you don't see this till afterwards, please hit hashtag replay in the comments or answer a question or drop a comment, something to let me know that you saw it. Last week's video was on movement. It was the first video of the new year, and it was about movement, which is a choice, which is the theme of today. And as we are doing, as also our choices, and sometimes I trip over words, so it's just me. You'll get used to it if you're new to my page. Last week's video was on movement. Okay, let's try that again. Last week's video was on movement and how important movement is to a lot of different things, including our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health. But movement is a choice. And, as are the things that you've resolved that you're going to do in 2025. So often we have choices when we think or tell ourselves that we don't. And if your resolutions and goals are already feeling tested, which is not uncommon, apparently there's a whole day that's dedicated to quitters. And by quitters, I mean people who have already, in January, who have already given up their New Year's resolutions. And that's a terrible thought, right? To think that just a couple weeks in, we've already thrown in the towel. But if your resolutions and goals are already being tested, today's video may especially resonate with you. So again, like I said, if you're here, let me know you're here. If you don't see this till afterwards, drop a comment, ask a question, or just hit hashtag replay in the comments so I know you saw it. And if I don't acknowledge you while you're on, if you comment or ask a question while I'm talking and I don't acknowledge you, it's just because I didn't see it. Facebook doesn't always show me all the things, but I hope today's video may resonate with you. So let's talk about the illusion of choice, of no choice rather. The illusion of no choice. Often we don't think we have a choice and we feel stuck in our career or overwhelmed by family demands or toxic friendships, relationships, drowning in financial struggles, and we often blame it on bad luck, family curses, past events, etc. And this is a large part of my history. For years, trapped is exactly the right word to describe how I felt in my whole life. I felt trapped by obligations. I felt trapped by financial debt. I felt trapped by being a mom and feeling the need to stay where I was, even though I thought that my life would be better anywhere else but where I was. A little something called destination preoccupation, which I've actually done a video on. And if you want to see that, let me know and I'll find it and I'll drop the link in the comments. But destination preoccupation is a thing, and it doesn't just relate to places. It relates more to believing that if anything could change about your life, it would be better. Sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's a place, sometimes it's a habit, whatever. But we often blame things that are out of our control instead of taking responsibility for the parts of it that we can control. So it might look like something like, I have no choice because this is the only way to do this. I have no choice because I can't do anything about it. I have no choice because I don't have any control. And I was just thrown into this situation. Or because other choices that I can think of are worse. And one of the reasons that I felt trapped in my world, in my life, was because I felt like everything was external, like I didn't have any internal control over anything, partly because of believing that my anxiety and depression was just my personality, and that was the way I was and that nothing could change. And partly just because of the stories that I told myself that I wasn't worthy or that I couldn't do it. Or a lot of times it was just fear. Even in restrictive situations, there are decisions to be made, like responding instead of reacting, seeking help or setting boundaries, recognizing the different choices that you have alone can free your thought process and cultivate a feeling of more power. So the general synopsis of my story, and we could go for days just regaling of all the details, but one of the things that stands out to me is when things started to change for me was when I had an opportunity to go with some friends to New York and then to Canada. And this was back in 2015. It was the tail end of 2015. And y'all, I was miserable. I was absolutely stinking miserable. I felt stuck in my job. I was burnt out. I felt stuck. My daughter at that point in time had graduated. I think she'd even moved out of the home. And I had always said that once she was graduated and on her own, I was going to move. I was going to just leave this town. I was going to go somewhere else. Everything was going to be better. But I wasn't doing it. Now I had entered school, so I had made a choice to change something. But it really wasn't kicking in yet. So the quite simple story is that some friends of mine were going to see a band that I absolutely love called the Scorpions in Montreal, Canada. And they were getting ready to move her mother down here from New York at the same time, and they needed a fourth driver. So in other words, there were going to be two vehicles, a moving truck and a car, and they needed a fourth person in one of those vehicles so that it was two per vehicle. Makes sense, right? Safety, the whole 9 yards. And all I had to do, I didn't have to buy my plane ticket. Now, I hadn't traveled in years, literally years. I didn't have to buy a plane ticket. All I had to do was help with the moving process, be that second person in that other vehicle, and buy my own concert ticket. That's all I had to do. And I kept saying no. I was like, oh no, I can't do that. And that was pretty much my answer. I've often referred to myself as a no man. If you've ever seen the movie Yes Man, you understand what I'm talking about. But my instantaneous response to everything was no, I can't do that. And then I would follow with the excuses. No, I can't do that because I can't afford it. No, I can't do that because I'm the only employee at work and I can't take the time off. No, I can't do that because of this obligation or that obligation. In this case, it was no, I can't afford to. No, I can't take the time off. No, that's after the new semester has started at school and I'm going to have all this work to do. And I just don't think y'all, it was like 5 nights and 4 days or something like that. It was absolutely the excuses that I could come up with for this. This was one of my favorite bands. I hadn't traveled out of the state of Florida since, I want to say 2005 at this point. So like 10 years, I had not traveled out of the state of Florida. And I hadn't been back to Michigan where I grew up in longer than that. So again, saying we don't have a choice either means we are not aware of the possibilities, we fear the unknown, or the big one, which is that we don't want to take responsibility. And this trip, I just couldn't, it wouldn't leave me alone. It wouldn't leave me alone. So after that initial no, I kept thinking, it kept rolling around in my head. And the question that kept coming up was why? Why can't you do it? And that was new for me. And as a woman of faith, I believe that God put in my heart that it was time for me to do something different so that I could show myself in retrospect, I didn't realize that at the time, but in retrospect, I think that I needed to show myself, and God needed to show me that I could do something different than what I always thought or what I was always doing. Because if we don't do something different, if we keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, that's basically the definition of insanity. It doesn't make sense to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect at some point that it's going to change, right? So again, my instantaneous response was no, I can't do that for this reason and that reason. And I don't have any cold weather clothes, and I don't have this and I don't have that. And I kept asking myself why. And then I started looking at my calendar and I was like, okay, well, I can, and I was still studying my AA. So schoolwork was actually still pretty easy at the time. I might have been already starting on my bachelor's, but it wasn't too bad. So I started looking at my stuff and I'm like, well, okay, this isn't due till then. And if I work a little bit ahead, I can get this done. And yeah, I am the only staff person at work, but I have the days to take off. I could, it means we have to close the office, but how often do I ask to do something like this? So what happened was I started looking into ways that I could make it happen. Basically what started was because as I started looking into ways that I could make it happen, I was looking for more arguments about why I couldn't. And much like sometimes happens in a hypothesis, you end up proving yourself wrong instead of right, correct? So, ultimately, I finally decided that I really didn't have any choices and that I was never going to have an opportunity like that again, where I could take a trip, fly to New York, take a little road trip to Canada, go to a concert and see a band I never thought I'd be able to see with friends that I trusted and loved and that had a very positive influence on me. When was I going to be able to do that again at almost no cost out of my pocket except for my meals and my concert ticket? Really? When was I going to be able to do that again? So I ended up making it work. I ended up making the choice to say yes instead of no. And sometimes that first big choice that's different kind of just opens the floodgates, because that choice led to a little more traveling and a trip back to where I grew up after like 25 years. And then to my activewear business, and ultimately led me back into grad school years after I finished my bachelor's so that I could finish pursuing my heart's desire. Because in that one first choice, all of a sudden I started to realize that things were different than what I was telling myself, that the stories I was telling myself weren't necessarily correct. And that the choices I was making were based on the stories I was telling myself. So, like I said, sometimes that first big choice to change can start a domino effect. And that first one's always the hardest. The first step is always the hardest. If you're a runner, the first step out the door sometimes is the hardest, especially when it's really cold like it is even in Florida right now. That first step to stand up for yourself is the hardest. It becomes easier after that. If you're in a bullying situation or abusive situation. So sometimes those first choices, even if they're teeny tiny, like the decision to just go on this trip, sometimes those first choices make all the difference in how you move forward. And there we go back to that moving again, but now it's metaphorical, right? So where do we start? Again, small choices build momentum. Good morning, Miss Danielle. And this can become a solution-based focus. And now that's kind of where I'm at. I'm on a solution-based focus where instead of assuming that I can't do something, I look for ways to make it work first before I make the decision that it's not possible. And rarely ever do I find that it's not possible if I greet whatever it is, the opportunity, the situation, if I greet it with how can we solve this instead of just putting up the wall and going, I can't do this. It's not possible. No way. And being a no man. So in a sense, like that movie, like Jim Carrey in that movie, I've kind of become a yes man, because when I look at an opportunity, instead of immediately saying no, now my instinct is, you know what? Let me look into this. Let me see if I can make it work. And that makes a huge difference. And that took a long time, but that's a brain retrain. Our brains are plastic. We can rewire ourselves. I just saw a friend of mine post not long ago that most people will choose being miserable over fear of the unknown. And that's absolutely true. And I've done it. I've been that person. And he wasn't wrong. We will choose our comfort zone. We will choose to say, no, we can't do something because we think like in this case with New York, I had a boyfriend at the time. Our relationship was going downhill. We were barely speaking at that point. We were seeing each other like once a week for dinner at Subway, y'all. And part of my excuses for not wanting to go to New York was I was afraid he was going to be mad at me for taking a trip without him, which made absolutely no sense at that stage of our relationship, right? So we will often choose the comfort, even if it's something that makes us miserable, over stepping out of that comfort zone and doing something that's scary. It's a risk, but it might just move us forward into something different, that we didn't think before was possible, or that we told ourselves wasn't possible. So a solution-based focus, how do we do that when it comes to starting small, and how do we start taking back our power and taking control of our lives? Because we really do have more choices than we think we do. Just like I said with movement, it starts in our heads. It absolutely starts in our heads. Simple mindset shifts. And I say simple, but it's really not that simple, because it's part of that retraining your brain. Simple mindset shifts. Okay, there we go. I think I said it right that time. Such as I get to instead of I have to. Make a difference. What if I could, instead of automatically saying I can't? Replace I can't with what if I could? What would that look like? And then maybe a little bit of reverse engineering from that stage. What would it take to get there? Whatever it is, a place, a promotion, a different personal space in your life. What will it take? What if I could? What would it take to get there? I want to meditate every day for 5 minutes. What would it take to get there? Because I don't think I can sit still right now for 30 seconds. All right, so we start with 30 seconds and we gradually increase until next thing we know, we're meditating for 5 minutes. So little teeny tiny choices build momentum. So another way of reframing, and again, a lot of this starts with mental reframing. Another way of reframing is I had no choice. Here's an example. I had no choice but to leave my job because things were so bad. Maybe instead that looks like things were bad at my job and I wanted something better. Because see, that first one, I had no choice but to leave my job because things were so bad, it deflects responsibility. We're blaming the job, we're blaming the circumstances for why we had to leave, when the truth is, if we dig down deep inside, we just knew we deserved better. We knew we needed something different, but we're afraid to take responsibility for that. This is not about you leaving your job, I promise, unless that resonates personally with you. It's just an example that I did pull from a life coach website, just so you know. But it is a great example. I loved my job. I loved my career of 21 years. However, I was extremely burnt out, and it was on my heart to do something different. It was on my heart to move into a more helping profession. So did I leave my job because I was burnt out, or did I leave my job because I needed something more, because I needed to pursue something different, because I needed to pursue my heart's desire? Did burnout drive me? I had to leave because I was so burnt out? Or was it that I wanted to leave because I was exhausted with that job and felt that I would get more fulfillment in a different profession? Which one gives me the responsibility? So, choosing our attitude and how we handle things is always our choice, always. Regardless of what's going on, choosing our attitude and how we respond is always our choice. And that's what I mean when I say we always have a choice, whether we think we do or not, no matter what the situation. And a great example of this is a quote from Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, and it had to do with his time in a Nazi concentration camp and in Germany. And in the face of life as a prisoner in this camp, he still had what he called, and this is a direct quote from his book, the last human freedom, which was to choose his attitude regardless of his circumstances. Now, for most of us, it's going to be hard to imagine what it's like to choose to have a good attitude in a concentration camp, right? But that just shows you the possibilities in what can happen if we make the choice of how we respond and we take responsibility for our feelings and how we respond and how we react to things and the choices we make, instead of pushing that blame to everything around us, the circumstances. God doesn't like me. My family is cursed. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm unlucky. All of those things. And the unlucky especially is something I used to say to myself a lot. So one of the places that we can choose is choosing to pause before reacting. I now refer to it as my minimum wait rule. And as a woman of faith, I just had a friend of mine post this morning before I came on, to not just wait before you respond, but to pray before you respond. So whatever your faith, whatever your beliefs are, whatever works for you, incorporate that into your minimum wait. But we can choose to wait. I just had this conversation with a friend of mine the other day. That person and I have both woken up early in the morning to a nasty email. One of the reasons you should probably not touch your phone for at least the first hour you're up. A mentor of mine told me that. Still working on that concept. But at different times, that person and I had both each woken up to a nasty 5:30, 6 a.m., whatever email, early morning email that we were just like, what the heck? Well, I didn't impose my minimum wait rule on my situation, and I did a knee-jerk response, which actually did have okay results, but probably wasn't the most professional at the time. Whereas this person went ahead and waited. They went ahead and they waited and they stewed on it, and then they sought a little advice and a little help from a couple of close friends, including me, on the issue. And then hours later responded in a much more professional, motivational manner than what they might have originally. And that is a place where we can choose our attitude and how we respond. So choosing to pause before reacting, or imposing a minimum wait rule, or choosing to pray before reacting, talk to the universe, whatever your beliefs are, that can be huge in changing the way things look. Okay? Because if you choose that and you choose to wait instead of that knee-jerk response like I did that morning, the results are often much more different and much more positive. Another place that we can take small bites and choices is healthier eating. We might be like, I love my potatoes. I can't eat healthier. I eat fast food all the time. Okay, so what does that look like? One meal or even one ingredient at a time. In my case, y'all, I love sour cream. I don't eat it a lot, but I love sour cream on my tacos. And when I have a baked potato, it is a little baked potato with my sour cream. It's not a little sour cream with my baked potato. Well, when I was sick and I was having trouble with my stomach and I needed to feed good bacteria back into my stomach, I retreated to a well-known remedy, which is I went to the store and I bought Greek yogurt because I wanted the protein. I bought organic, and I bought it made with whole milk because I didn't want the processes that make it low fat. I wanted organic because I know it doesn't create the phlegm that I usually have. Good morning, Miss Kayla. So I went and bought Greek yogurt. And as I'm eating the Greek yogurt, if you've had Greek yogurt, especially if you buy plain and it's not processed and it's not got all those added things, you'll know that Greek yogurt's actually got a significantly more sour flavor. Now, previously, when people had suggested that I exchange sour cream for Greek yogurt, I was like, I can't do that. I can't do that. I love my sour cream. I don't eat it that often. It's okay. Well, as I started eating this Greek yogurt, after like day 2 or 3 of Greek yogurt with blueberries every day to help my stomach, which it did, by the way, it was massive contributor to my healing. I realized that this Greek yogurt tastes pretty sour, and I probably could replace sour cream with it. So I did. We just had tacos Sunday night. I used Greek yogurt instead of sour cream. I didn't freak out because there was no sour cream in the house, like I usually do, because can't have tacos without sour cream. And I used a little bit of Greek yogurt on the tacos, and I didn't notice a flavor difference. I seriously did not. Now, still don't know if I could do it on a baked potato, but I don't eat baked potatoes a whole lot at home, so that's okay. So again, little teeny tiny changes like that. You eat out a lot, choose a salad instead of something fried. Choose chicken instead of beef. There's a lot of little tiny changes that can go there that are your choice and you can control. Even if you can't control where you're eating, you can kind of control what's going in your mouth. Another choice that you can make that's little is movement over stagnation. Again, Talked about movement big last week. I'll drop that link in the comments in case you missed that video. But movement over stagnation, less TV, a standing desk, taking the longer way to the bathroom. I have a standing desk. That's where I'm at right now. I have 2 bathrooms. One is a tiny bit farther away than the other. So when I'm working on school and I'm rushed and I don't feel like I have time, sometimes I'll go to the closer one because, good morning, Miss Laura, because I got to hurry. It's like literally only like 10 more steps over there. So when I'm wondering why I'm not getting my steps for the day, it might be, and the house is kind of in a circle, so I could even go the long way to the bathroom that's farther and get a few more steps and take a healthy break from the screen at the same time. So again, it's about choices. We can choose movement over stagnation. Social obligations. You don't have to be everywhere. There's a lot of them, especially over the holidays. A lot of us are coming off of all those holiday parties and gatherings. Oh my gosh. But we don't have to go to all of them. We don't have to be everywhere. Even if we're in business, we don't have to be everywhere all the time. Not only that, but we don't have to stay for the whole thing, especially if it's a mixer type setup or a party. A lot of times those are set up, good morning, Miss Carla, so that we can kind of come and go as we please. So we can be there on time. We don't have to stay. A mixer, most mixers, business mixers are typically 2 hours. You can stay for the first hour. You can go a little bit late. You don't have to be everywhere all of the time. You can choose to make that public appearance and control that time space a little bit more. One of my favorite, when I talk to people about starting a side hustle, or joining my business, one of the most common excuses, and this is the most common excuse that most people hear when they're trying to bring somebody into a networking group or into a business or into a volunteer organization. One of the number one things is, I don't have time. I don't have time. And I've used that a lot. Well, the truth is that we can choose to make the time if it's something we really, really desire. And before you say, I don't have time, think about how you're using your time. Sometimes we slip in at home to this routine of we park ourselves at 7 or 8 o'clock and we sit in front of the TV for 2 or 3 hours. I'm not proud of that. Now, there is a lot of time when I'm sitting in front of the TV for 2 to 3 hours that I'm also doing other things. I'm scheduling things and I'm talking to people, or I'm looking at stuff for school for the next day. I'm blocking my calendar. But I have to kind of giggle when I see people say, I don't have time. And not just to me, to plenty of other people too. When I hear the words, I don't have time, and then I see them later asking for the next binge-worthy show on Netflix, I kind of have to giggle. And I've been that person. Again, I've been that person where I didn't have time to do anything, and it's because I didn't want to take away that time I was spending staring at the TV or scrolling through Facebook or whatever. So again, what you choose determines what happens next. And when we make even the teeny tiniest better choices, when we choose to say yes where we're used to saying no, when we choose to step out of our comfort zone, do a little healthy swap in each meal. Maybe brown rice instead of white rice. Maybe it looks like making meatloaf with a mixture of turkey and beef instead of all beef. Little teeny tiny swaps. What that does is, like I said when I started talking about this, small choices build momentum to big change. Just remember that. So every choice we make either moves us closer or further away from the person we want to be. Good morning, Miss Amanda. I don't have time. Where are you spending your time? You are going to prioritize what you want. So if it's not something, if you say you want it, but you're not prioritizing making time for it, maybe you don't want it as much as you think you do, or maybe there's something that you're telling yourself that makes you think you aren't worthy of it or you aren't deserving of it. Last week in the video about moving, I talked about making time for exercise. This was a huge one. A lot of times people say, and I have said, I've been guilty, I don't have time. Got a lot to do today, roll out of bed, walk over to the desk. I don't even see the shower till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, let alone make time for exercise. But exercise has been proven to make us more efficient cognitively, physically. We're better with our time. So why not choose to take that half hour one time? Do that little bit of exercise in the morning before you get started and see what happens. See how the day goes. Make that time, because it's a form of self-care. It's a form of mental care. It's a form of physical care. The procrastination angle. When we procrastinate, it's because we don't like something. It's because we don't want to do it, or it's because we fear that we're going to fail at it, right? The choice, when we procrastinate, the choice to do it either disappears completely. You know, like if you leave something important at the bottom of a pile, by the time you get to it, it doesn't matter anymore. I've been guilty of that many times, especially at work. But the choice either goes away, or you end up hurrying up to get it done in the last minute, and it really stresses you out. But it's okay because I work better under pressure. Guilty, y'all. That's like my mantra for like the biggest chunk of my life is I work better under pressure. And that may be true, but it's really, we may think that's true, but it's really not. We push ourselves to that limit. I joke all the time with my boss at NAMI about how I'm like a carp. I can grow with, I grow as far as the time I have or the space I have to grow within. Meaning, I can get the same stuff done in 2 hours if I only have 2 hours, but if I have 4 hours, I'll get that done in 4 hours. So it's not really that we work better under pressure. It's that we tell ourselves we do so that we can justify procrastinating. Whereas if we took a big project and we bit off little pieces at a time, we get it done on time with a lot less stress. And I find that with papers all the time. And I'm slowly tweaking how I handle papers and written assignments so that I am doing more with them as I go, as I'm reading through the text. I'm making little notes in my paper templates. Good morning, Miss Betty. I'm making little notes in my paper templates or whatever, instead of reading this stuff and then like the day before the paper's due going, oh my gosh, I got to do this paper. I'm never going to get it done, and tearing my hair out, right? So again, the procrastination angle often brings us more stress, where when we choose to take little bites of things, especially the things we don't like, if we start them earlier and we get them done sooner, it's so much less stressful, and we open ourselves up to getting more done in general. There's an article by Audrey Thompson that states that we have up to 8 choices at any given time, which she describes as this one, that one, both, neither, some of this, some of that, some of both, or something else. That's a big deal. I'm going to drop that in the comments so that you can remember it later, because she's right. That's a minimum of 8 choices at all times, right? And I would say, you know, if it's a really strange situation, you might only have 4 of those choices, but we always have at least 2 to do or to not do. And remember, in the immortal words of Rush, if you choose not to decide, you've still made a choice. Yes, I love my pop culture, and especially I love the music world. So as I wrap this up, I would encourage you to think about a recent situation where you felt stuck. And what choices could you have made? Now, I'm not a fan of going backwards, but sometimes we can learn from looking backwards a little bit. So in the moment, you felt stuck, you didn't think you had any choices. But in looking back or taking a break or stepping away from it, you may have found that you had more choices than you thought. So I encourage you to think about a recent situation where you felt stuck, and what choices you could have made differently than the ones that you ended up making. And I challenge you today to identify one situation every day where you recognize a choice and take action. Even if it's, I'm going to buy this package of nuts at the convenience store instead of this candy bar over here. Honestly, the nuts are healthier and they're probably cheaper too. Have you seen the price of candy? Oh my gosh. So I challenge you to identify one situation every day where you recognize a choice. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't have to be eating. It could be eating. It could be movement. It could be career related. It could be school related. It could be, you know, a choice not to scream at your child. Whatever the case may be, recognize a choice and take a different action. If every day sounds scary, then start with 1 per week instead of not doing it all. Sometimes when things look scary, we just freeze instead of taking that little tiny step. And again, I can't stress enough, small choices build momentum for big changes. So I ask you to remember today, not choosing is still a choice, but not choosing takes away your power. So make a choice, right or wrong, make a choice, because you never know where that tiny little step might lead you. like that tiny little step that I made to choose to go to New York with my friends, or to choose to start my activewear business, or to choose to go after my degree at like 49 years old. So remember, not choosing is still a choice, but it takes away your power. Small choices build momentum for big changes. And that could be steps. That could be steps per day. That could be bites of food. That could be whatever. Small choices build momentum for big changes. And you have more power than you think. Good morning, Roy. But you only have that power over you. Sometimes we spend all of our time trying to control situations and trying to control other people, when what we really need is to take that control over ourselves and kind of stay in our lane. Otherwise, what happens is when we try to control other people or situations, those things start to rent space in our head, and we're consumed with it when the rest of the world has literally moved on and we're still stuck here. So you have more power than you think, but you only have that power over yourself. So that is it for today. I hope you found something in this message helpful. If you're just coming in at the end, I encourage you to go back to the beginning. This video will be here waiting for you to watch it. If you've missed any of my videos, you can always go to the video tab on my Facebook page, check them all out. If you want to see the video that I mentioned earlier, which was about destination preoccupation, it was part of last year's New Year's series. Let me know. I'll go find it. I'll drop the link in the comments. I'll drop last week's video in the comments in case you missed it. And most importantly, if you found this helpful, please share. And don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have questions, if you have suggested topics that you think would be great for Wellness Wednesday. And of course, you know, if you need activewear, because I did mention my activewear boutique, and I rarely do on this, but if you need activewear, let me know. My company has an amazing new release happening today. So again, if you found this helpful, please share. Make a choice. Recognize an opportunity to make a choice and take action. Because again, you have more power than you think, but only over you and your choices. Good morning, Miss Krista. I hope you all have a fabulous Wednesday. I will see you next week. And most importantly, between now and then, be well. Bye.